Thanks, guys. Great cast on the day. I'm here with Smoothie, victorious support for Cloud9. Congratulations on your 2-0 weekend, first off. You guys struggled last week, though, before the LCS, coming off an 0-2 week. How was preparation on the week off for you guys coming back here?
After coming off the 0-2 week, we found out why we were struggling, and it became really evident. Before that week, we didn't really have a direction. We just blamed all our losses on pick and ban. It was just not the way to look at it. We just found out why we were losing, and yeah, we just built off that.
So what was that lack of direction? What was the cause of these losses if it wasn't the pick and ban?
We weren't really playing to the correct objectives. We were just going for, getting wards for JENSEN, and then JENSEN kills people, or again, Impact 2, getting wards on his side, and he just 1v1s anybody. And we're just going for those kind of super plays, and that's not how we're supposed to play the game. We're supposed to play the game more controlled and just go for objectives more than just solo kills.
All right, well, that makes a lot of sense. So, coming now in a new patch, people are talking about there being a lot more flexibility in the meta in pick ban, with a lot of the OPs kind of being knocked down a couple tiers. Do you think that's true, and how have you found the new patch?
The new patch for me personally is, I don't know, there's a lot of diversity now. It's not like the super OPs anymore, like Camille LeBlanc, Rengar. They're not just the omnipotent champs that you have to pick no matter what. There's always variation in pick and ban now, and there's a lot of just picks I can pull out too.
Cool. Well, TSM now, you guys are both at the top of the table. You're still ahead because of the match score difference, but 1-1 in your series score. Going into playoffs, would you guys be confident in a rematch against TSM?
Yeah, for sure. Before we versed TSM, we were pretty much winning a lot of our games, so we didn't really have any direction of how to improve. So that's where the whole issue of always blame pick and ban came from. But now that we have a direction to learn from, we're gonna be a lot better for next time for sure.
All right, well, thank you very much, and congratulations once again. We're gonna head it back to the analysts to close out the day.
Thank you very much, Azale. Great interviews on the day, by the way. We got a win for Cloud9, honestly. They're now completely dominating over FlyQuest. They beat them both times. More convincing this time around. They didn't drop any games, and I gotta say, it's gotta feel good for C9, still holding on to first place.
Right, and I mean, obviously FlyQuest is a good team. Even though it was a 2-0, I don't think it was an easy 2-0 at all. It was definitely two relatively close games, especially this game 2, where FlyQuest seemed to be in control for a large portion of this game, but just weren't able to close it out.
Yeah, so let's talk about the team comp and whatnot. Smoothie just got done saying we learned to stop blaming champ select. And honestly, these were two games where it felt like, the champions in the roster feel like they make a lot of sense. I personally really like the idea that both Rengar and Nautilus can face dive in, and then Lulu follows up for 1 second knockup, and that's usually enough to kill off whoever you need.
Yeah, and you can actually play this comp a couple different ways. Obviously, Syndra can follow up on that dive and just flash R somebody, and we saw a couple of times that is how JENSEN had to play the team fights, is instantly blow up ALTEC or high. And then you can also kind of kite back with the Lulu Ezreal Syndra as well, being actually a decent DPS champion. We always talk about her burst with her ultimate, but just Q spam is pretty strong on its own.
Yeah, and you've got W's for true damage as well. So you can cut through tanks as you get later on into the game. And yeah, it was a pretty good game. On the flip side, though, you had FlyQuest, who were really keying off of Shockwave. It's a team where their engage tools are limited. I think Ashe and Varus are the best two if you have no engage tools at all. Ashe and Jhin, I would personally put above Varus as far as engage bot laners go. But Malzahar can go for the flash ults. Orianna can land shockwaves. But when you have to flash Mal's ult, that's still a little too forced for my liking. When Swain is your top lane.
Right. I mean, despite having their team comp's a little weird, where they don't have a traditional frontliner. Sure, Swain can tank actually decently well, but he doesn't have the guaranteed lockdown CC, so it can be hard to hit those never moves if you need to hit them. They do have the Malzahar, but there were a number of times where he ended up having Rengar as a first threat into his team, and he wants to lock him down so they can melt the front line. But the Rengar kept getting away, and then your Malzahar basically be useless the rest of the team fight. So. Their team comp was a little harder to execute, I think, and they did have an early game lead, but their shot calling wasn't quite clean enough to close the game out when they did have those advantages.
Yeah, they did have some of those portions. We're going to go into the replay portion of this sort of post-game segment. We're going to start with a team fight that actually FlyQuest did win, usually off the back of amazing shockwaves, and the CONTRACTZ just gets kind of chunked out at the very start, even though he does kind of turn immune to CC at the end of it.
Right, so that's what we're talking about, where a number of times CONTRACTZ would go in early and kind of burn Malzahar's cooldowns. This time it doesn't actually matter that much. A good ultimate there by High. He had these all game, actually. He was a huge reason in why these team fights were even close, was that he almost always hit at least one carry threat on the side of C9. This time, it's able to finish off JENSEN right away, gives the rest of FlyQuest the ability to chase down, and after a very, very extended sequence, FlyQuest ends up with a 4-for-1, which leads into this Baron call, which is honestly a little too aggressive for my liking.
Yeah, so CONTRACTZ flanks down, and the call is, okay, we need to actually peel off, but Moon is still tanking. Okay, wait, maybe we're not killing CONTRACTZ. No, wait, we are killing CONTRACTZ. Quick, everyone leave the pit. Okay, no, we really are killing CONTRACTZ. He ulted. I guess they get him in the end, and now we're in a situation where, like, Moon has to ult to get back in, and I like the call that was made right here. The last 3 seconds, it's the best you can make for the situation you already put yourself in. You can complain about the first 12 seconds of that fight, and I'll give you credit to say that was some messy stuff. But at the very end, it's like, it's a 1k HP Baron. Just ult into the pit and smite it. It's the best you can do at that point, so I'll give them credit for, like, at least that clutch decision. But, like, you won a team fight convincingly, and then you lost 3 people getting the back half.
And the thing for me about FlyQuest is the fact that they have such good creative shot calling, not necessarily the cleanest, but they always seem to be able to make a play. And I think they're kind of like the opposite of Dignitas, where you see them struggle to make plays, and they start forcing 50-50 Barons, and you're fine because you're like, Dignitas, you need to do something, go for the 50-50 Barons. FlyQuest isn't a team that struggles to make plays. I don't think they need to opt into as many 50-50 Barons as they tend to, and I think they could benefit from pulling back a little bit more and saying, like, we're going to trust our own shot calling.
Yeah.
We don't need to risk this because we'll find another look. We will. We're good enough to find another look. Let's not force this one.
It is really strange. You've got teams like Dignitas or Envy where they're still learning shot calling. And so it's like, let's just do Baron forces. We hope we get into a team fight. Maybe it'll be okay. And you're right, FlyQuest should be better than this. High should be better than just going for like 7 YOLO Barons a game and hoping that like Moon lands his might and whatnot. And you're right, it's been backfiring. So we can start looking at some cleaner plays. Basically, C9 started really wiping up the end of the game. And you know, these battles were always back and forth about who can land shotguns, who can land CC, but this time C9 just had much better engage, and they got the cleaner kills.
Right, and so, like we said, High was huge in this game. Once again, you see the Malzahar ult go onto the Rengar, who just baits those cooldowns out, runs away, and then High gets caught out here, but he does land a big enough shockwave before he goes down to be able to stop C9 from being able to get too much more off the end of that fight. So a lot of this came down to High, and there was the one team fight at the end of the game that was just a little bit too much for him to actually be able to win.
Yeah, and you kind of saw like what the strength was of the comp, of having a good dedicated engager, and that was Impact on the Nautilus, right? Landing the hook, you got the double man knockup thanks to the wild growth as well, and it felt like a team win for Cloud9. I have to give a personal shout out to CONTRACTZ, where he had one of the worst starts you could have had in the game. Impact gives away first blood to the enemy jungler. He loses 2 camps at level 1 and level 2 to the invade from C9, and then Moon just comes back into the base and is like, oh, I've got a Sight Stone, and now your entire top jungle's got wards in it, and I'm taking Raptors again. And CONTRACTZ managed to actually be very useful this game, despite the fact that he lost 3 camps on the first 2 jungle spawns. Like, that's horrible. That's really, really rough.
Right, and I think you can look at everyone on the team having good plays at different points. Obviously, Jensen struggled a little bit, got picked off once or twice, but also had some team fights where he flashed in and was able to blow up key targets. He killed ALTEC in a couple of fights that they wouldn't have won if he wasn't able to do that. And then generally, Sneaky didn't die early in the team fights, which is exactly what you want out of Ezreal, and he was able to get damage in. He got hit by a couple too many shockwaves, but it seemed like everyone was kind of stepping on High's Orianna
yeah,
then.
stepping on the shockwaves. So player of the game ultimately does go to Impact for this one. We thought that he was kind of the big cornerstone where he's landing the very important anchors in onto the primary targets. His ults were getting like 3 to 4 man knockouts as well. Like, he was the cornerstone that was actually winning the team fights.
Right, I think because the game was so close, you kind of have to give it to the guy who won the biggest team fights. He had the huge base defense, comboing with Jensen the time that they were able to get onto the carries. And then the final team fight where he TPs in and gets the home guard. He got a 4-man knockup ultimate by putting on the backline target and High. So overall, those last 2 team fights, he played really, really well.
You got to give him a lot of props, and it's good because Impact, last time we saw him in week 5 was like, man, I played terribly. They benched him for Ray, didn't fix anything, they still lost. And so C9 bouncing off a 0-2 match week win. I believe they're both 2-0s actually game record wise. I know they 2-0 this one. I think they won the previous one that way as well.
Right.
For some reason I'm blanking, but I'm sure it happened because they're that good of a team. So C9 sitting in first place, and if everyone's firing on all cylinders and they feel like their internal issues got a lot better as well, as Smoothie said, yeah, we stopped playing pick ban. We understand that it's not just everyone camp for Jensen. Let's actually play as a team. Then the sky's the limit. I think their player skill is insanely high. These guys can all make the case for best individual per role. You may not say every single one, but they can all make the case for it.
They're at least
down
in that
the
discussion,
line.
yeah.
Right, they're in the discussion for being on the podium there, and that's a great thing. And CONTRACTZ, again, to talk about him one more time, I feel like he's been overshadowed for so much of this year. Where Acadian is like a hard carrying Echo Fox, you've got Moon doing so many things on FlyQuest, and the question was, is CONTRACTZ on the best team, or is he actually a great jungler? And we're starting to see some of that.
Right, and I think there were those kind of questions. I definitely had them as well. I think at least this week he showed that he stepped up a lot. I think even game 1, he basically got the team snowballing, and they were able to use that to win. So I think it was a great bounce back week for Cloud9 overall. FlyQuest did go 1-1 on the week. They still had their crazy picks. They did a little bit of that. This series at least a little bit more normal, and they showed that they can compete with the best when they do play standard comps. So I don't think there's any criticism there about that. It's just a little outclassed today.
Yeah, so we're down to the last match of the day basically going on right now. There's only 3 weeks left after this one, and one of the teams that's still fighting for a playoff spot is playing right now. We're going to toss you over to NALCS 2, where Envy's taking on Immortals. See you there.